Oh, you the voice?
Nah, not me.
So if you're not the voice, who is?
The people, man. The people's the voice.
So what does that make you?
That makes me the middleman. I'm the middleman.
Henry? Is that you?
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Middleman Podcast. I am the man in the middle, Kevin Martinez, and today I'm joined by the owner and creator of Naked Toffee, Josh Kieper.
What's going on, everybody? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining me here, man. It's a pleasure to actually be here having a podcast. You know, you and I met organically at the YMCA in Dunmore.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And I want to ask you, see if you remember, how did this podcast come to fruition? Because I know for a fact you gave me your business card. Okay. But did I mention anything to you prior to that, prior to you just randomly exchanging a business card to someone just passing by? Is that what happened there, or did I ever mention to you that I had a podcast or something like that? Do you remember?
We pretty much just started chopping it up, and you were just like, hey, man, you'd be good on a podcast. And I'm like, I love doing stuff like that, you know, and a couple weeks later, here I am, you know, just chopping it up, having a good time, and just bullshitting, you know?
That's definitely what I think it was. All right, yeah, that makes sense because like you handed me your business card, and I'm like, all right, well, this guy is out here, he's doing his thing, you know. So I'm definitely respecting that. And then you showed me your lineup, you were talking about it, and you're so quick and nitty with your answers, you know. So I was like, nah, this guy knows about toffee. So thank you for being here, and I think that's a way of just you trying to always share with people.
Absolutely. And speaking of, those 11 quarter pounds of toffee are going to be yours because, I mean, you can't be the middleman without having the product. So that's almost 3 pounds of toffee right there. No gluten, no chemicals, no preservatives, all very freshly made. And I do certify that gluten-free with a gluten test kit as well.
That is awesome because I think my one buddy has to avoid gluten right now. He really does. So this would be great. I would love to bring it over to him and be like, yo, buddy, I know you're eating healthy, but we have something here that you can eat, without any gluten in it because, it was for his health, So that's a very, very good that you have that product. And what do we have standing in front of us? Actually, before we get into all this, okay, toffee. For those people who don't know, what is toffee? What does it consist of? And so on and so forth,
Yeah, so toffee is primarily caramelized butter, caramelized sugar, roasted nuts. I have 5 varieties that are 5 ingredients only. So that would be butter, sugar, nuts, sunflower lecithin, and sea salt. And that would be my almond toffee, cashew toffee, pistachio toffee, sesame toffee, and macadamia toffee. I've also got a peanut brittle and a chocolate peanut brittle. And then for my non-nutty toffees, there's butter toffee, coffee toffee, mocha toffee, and cacao bourbon toffee. And Kevin's checking out my menu right now as we speak.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. You know this just right off the top of the dome. That's impressive. So how many flavors do we have right there?
We are up to 11 flavors. I just released macadamia toffee about a month ago.
Wow, man. Congratulations. This is absolutely amazing. Naked Toffee. And it was established in 2008. How about that?
Yep.
So it's been going for so many years now. And it all started with a candy apprenticeship. Looking at interviews that you've been a part of, such as In a Nutshell, PA Home Live. I've seen you do your shows on there. But you mentioned that this all started at a candy apprenticeship. What was that candy apprenticeship, and what drawn you towards this type of field? Because like it's so interesting. It's funny because you just put your 2 weeks and saw a sign on the side of the road and went about your merry way, and this is now what you do full time.
Yes, sir. So the way that I got into this, back in 2005, the girl that I was living with at the time, she's like, hey, there's a candy cook apprenticeship advertised at a local candy factory. And it was like a mile from the house. So I literally walked into the candy factory, no appointment, no references, no resume, no experience in a job in a candy factory. And it was just like, I'm your guy, hire me. And they did. So I was a candy cook apprentice for 2 years, started making it in my own kitchen in 2008. And in 2008, the girl I was living with at that time, she was like, why are you buying Christmas presents for everyone you know? You should have all these candy recipes. Just make candy for people. So that's why it says 2008 on it. That's why I started making it in my own kitchen. Then from 2008 to 19, I made it in my own kitchen. I was stirring 7-pound batches of syrup by hand, which was absolutely grueling. And then in 2019, I started to produce at the Carbondale Technology Transfer Center, which is a commercial kitchen and a business incubator, where they give you the equipment to make your product, the location to make your product, and they also support your business by helping you by answering questions and hooking you up with experts and stuff like that.
So do you mind me asking, what was the official title of the apprenticeship? Was it through that facility that you just mentioned?
Yeah, it was a candy cook apprenticeship. So my job was to learn candy recipes and, make candy and stuff like that. So what they would do is they would bring in executive candy chefs, people with 50 years plus experience in the business, and a lot of them specialized in one certain area of candy making. So the one gentleman who used to come in fairly often, I saw him maybe 6 or 7 times in the 2 years I was there, he actually gave me the deal the one time, and he told me, he said he makes $1,000 an hour for a 20-hour work week. He just, gets all expenses, food, lodging, and travel provided. Everything's provided. He said he works for about 3 months out of the year. You do the math, takes 9 months off and just has a great time. But he didn't fall backwards into that job. I mean, he was 50 years experience in candy factories. But that dude came in smiling, laughing, bouncing. He was a real happy dude, as you might imagine.
As a candy chef should be, right? Are most candy chefs happy? Happy dudes, would you say?
The funny thing is chefs in general, because I'm also like a personal chef and a traveling chef, but chefs in general can be real angry and real fiery and get real pissed off fast. I mean, I've been working in kitchens and seen chefs just throw pans of shit, screaming, freaking out. I mean, I've seen chefs go nuts, but as a candy chef, I take a lot of the pressure off. I plan ahead, I prepare, make sure everything goes smoothly, and usually I'm just having a great time doing this.
How long was your apprenticeship? You said it was about 2 years. Is
Yeah,
that like the average apprenticeship for anyone, or did you pick it up pretty quick? So then maybe they were able to like boost your apprenticeship program a little bit faster,
Yeah, so every single thing they taught me, I wrote it down, I put it into my voice recorder, and I made I made it a whole bunch of times. So, I put through the paces and I did a lot of work on it. So, I mean, I have a candy notebook at home, but toffee is by far the easiest to make and the best stuff that I have. It doesn't require a lot of specialized equipment either, which is nice. So the apprenticeship wasn't a certain amount of time. It was just while I was working at the candy factory.
Okay, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. So it's like you're so fascinated with it, right? Why there are so many candies? Like you said, you were trained by many chefs, specialized in different amounts of candy, like gum, licorice, toffee, so on and so forth. And you decided to go with the toffee route. What fascinated you so much about this specific candy that you were like, you know what, this is what I want to do? I know you mentioned it was easy. Is it the process? Why are you so passionate about toffee? Love it though. It's a great passion. It's a burning in you. It's burning.
Yeah, and what's
vibrant.
funny is before I started cooking candy, like I never thought about how it was made. I never was like, oh gee, like people eat candy, but they don't really think about the process. So I had a friend say to me when I was an apprentice, he's like, what do you just throw a bunch of stuff together and see what you get? And I'm like, no, it's a highly specific process with specialized conditions and all that. But it's really cool to do. And I mean, toffee itself, this stuff is just so unbelievably good. I mean, I go to shows all the time. I'm at shows almost every weekend, and I give samples to people, and just seeing their reactions is the best. So my favorite people to give this to as a sample are the skeptical ones who are just like, yeah, I'll try it. Like they're trying to be nice, and the eyebrows go up, the knees drop down, and they're like, wow, that's good. And I'm like, I know. So that right there is just a lot of fun.
I honestly am super excited to get into these bags later because I can't remember a time that I've actually had toffee. So this is going to be interesting, and it does look really, really good. How would you describe, the experience of eating a toffee? Like, is it the texture of a Laffy Taffy? Does it melt like chocolate? How does toffee work, bro?
Well, it pairs well with Arizona iced tea. I can tell you that from fact and experience, so we know that. This stuff pairs well with beer, wine, liquor, coffee, tea, hot chocolate. It's a very impressionable flavor because it's half butter and half sugar, so it pairs well with a lot of stuff. The consistency of it, my 5-ingredient toffees are the softest consistency. The peanut brittle and chocolate peanut brittle are kind of a medium hardness. And then the non-nutty toffees are harder, almost like a hard candy, because you don't have the roasted nuts to soften up the caramelized butter and sugar. So as an example, like my butter toffee, I like to let that melt in my mouth with like a hot coffee, hot tea, hot chocolate. And it's like having cream and sugar right in your mouth as you sip. And that would also pair well with Arnold Palmer half and half too. I've done that one many times, but I mean, this stuff, I guess, very, very impressionable flavor, pairs well with a whole lot of things. So when I was on PA Live, I actually made a no-bake naked toffee cheesecake with mocha toffee and graham crackers as a crust. And then, I just did a simple 5-ingredient no-bake cheesecake for that one too.
Quite the process to do it. I know you mentioned countless times that there's a grueling process to it, especially when you were in a smaller kitchen. You were saying that it took you about 45 minutes to stir the mixture. And that's passion, man. That's a deep desire to make it perfect. Did you always was it like, what was that drive, bro? Like, what was it like? I got myself into this candy apprenticeship. You have a no fail quit attitude on yourself. That's what it really was. It's like, you know what? This really is tedious. It's killing me right now, but I have to make it perfect.
Man, one of my favorite things to say in life is go get it. No one's going to hand it to you. So if you want something, go get it. Don't wait for someone to hand it to you. Don't wait for someone to show up and just be like, hey, you should do this. So like before I started like performing at open mics and singing a lot, I used to go to parties and kind of wait for someone to say, hey, get on the mic, or hey, you should sing. I was like, you don't do that. You just get up there and belt something out, just have a good time.
Depends on who you are. Yeah, go out there and just. I remember I had a karaoke at my little sister's birthday, and I was the life of the party, bro. I was going hard for no reason, you know. But it's a lot of fun, you know, and I see that in your attitude and who you are, you know. So it's really really cool that you have like that burning passion to stir it for 45 minutes, you know, and just like starting this process, it seems very intriguing. So you do have a website. It's called nakedtoffee.org, correct?
.com.
.com.
It used to be .org, but we bought nakedtoffee.com and just moved everything over to that.
Gotcha. What made you do that? Is that just like a domain, you know, better?
You know what's funny? When you say nakedtoffee.org to someone, they almost automatically hear nakedtoffee.com. And I've even been speaking and said my website and said nakedtoffee.com, and my employee at the time was like, it's nakedtoffee.org. Oh, sorry. You know, so it's just much more accessible and a lot easier for people to remember and find rather than, you know, looking for .org.
Okay, that makes sense. And, you know, I was just thinking about it on your website. You know, you said that you like to gift it to people. And then that brings us back to where it all started.
Yep.
You know, for Christmas, you started gifting it to people. And do you feel like you're still giving this gift to people every time you give them their samples?
Yeah, and the nice thing is I don't have to be cutthroat about this, so I'm very, very judicious. I'm very happy to give out samples. You know, I don't have to be like, oh, this is going to eat my bottom line, or oh, I'm not going to eat tomorrow if I give you these samples. And not only that, you know, samples are what drives this business. You can't tell how good this stuff is by looking at it. And I'll give you an excellent example. So a couple of weeks ago when I was doing my shopping for my cook, I was at a grocery store, and I have, you know, 50 pounds of sugar, all these things and that. So I have all this stuff. And I say to the cashier, you know, here's a quarter pound of toffee for you, you know, so you can try what I'm making with all this stuff. And he's like, oh, yeah, thanks. So then I did a show a couple of weeks later, and this family comes up and says, hey, you gave this to a cashier at the store the other day, and we came down to get more from you. And I said, oh, yeah, I remember I gave them almond toffee. And they said, oh, great, we want that one. So they tried a bunch, and they took, you know, a bunch of toffee from me. So it was, you know, direct results. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not cutthroat. I'm not just giving it to you and be like, all right, pay me now, give me money, like buy it. I'm very happy just getting those samples in people's mouths, because if I tell you it's good, it doesn't mean anything. If you say it's good, it actually matters because it's not your product.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm gonna have to tap into this, bro.
Anytime you're ready.
Anytime I'm ready. There's so much in the podcast left to go. It's like every quarter of the podcast, you might open up a new bag. What's your personal favorite up there?
Cacao bourbon.
All right, hook me up with that for right now. Hook me up
Find
with
it.
We're gonna figure this out. Perfect.
Cocoa bourbon.
Okay.
So cacao bourbon is sort of like a hard candy consistency. You're going to want to let that melt in your mouth, or lightly crunch it and let it melt in your mouth, which took me about 10 years to figure that out. You know, just crunch into it every time. With the cacao bourbon, as that dissolves, you're going to get creamy caramelized butter. You'll get notes of cherry, a nice hit of bourbon, and then a chocolatey finish.
Smells good.
Oh, yeah. I flavor that with a natural bourbon extract, and that's where the cherry note comes from, and that's where you get that nice hit of bourbon. Oh, he's brave. He's crunching right in. Yeah.
Another bite of ASMR for my people out there. All right, sticky on the teeth. Good though.
So that'll dissolve less than a minute after you're done with it. And if you let it melt, it doesn't stick at all.
We got the coffee going.
There you go. Excellent combination.
This is Cafe Bustelo. Really good coffee.
There you go. Half and half. Good stuff.
This is very interesting. Excuse me, sorry. I like it. I do like it. Mike, you had a bit yourself, so go ahead, digest that. Let's hear your review in a second. So this is one of your most recent flavors.
So that one was released, I want to say, about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago or so. My newest flavor, like we said already, was macadamia toffee. Before that, we released sesame toffee. Before that was chocolate peanut brittle. And then it was cacao bourbon before that. So, yeah, probably early 2020.
This is great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Josh.
Oh, thank you for trying.
So I decided to take like your method, like let it melt, and like you were right, like you get that buttery, that caramelized taste, and at the very end, like that, like bourbon hits you. So like it was a really interesting combination of flavors. So I like that one.
Cool. And I like to say it has the nice notes of bourbon without that nasty bourbon hit, like that nasty alcoholic burn, which is what I
Right.
don't like about bourbon.
Right. Like it's subtle, but it doesn't like smack you in the face. Like So it's like the perfect combination.
Oh, I see a big smile over there. Nice.
Yeah, it's pretty good, not gonna lie. Especially in the morning. I would love this in the morning, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'll try with my Arizona right now.
I'll put it right in my coffee. Like I would get my coffee warm enough, break off a piece, like a quarter of the piece, and put it right in the coffee, let it melt and blend like a creamer.
That'll work.
That's the middleman method. That's how I'm gonna do it for sure.
There you go. So you guys are gonna like coffee toffee and mocha toffee too.
Awesome, bro. I'm so excited. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So where do you distribute? Do you distribute all over the world? Do you distribute locally? Where can people usually find Naked Toffee nowadays?
So the main ways I sell it are nakedtoffee.com, which is my website, my e-store. It lists my upcoming shows and my retailers. I have 4 local retailers in and around Scranton. So Dutchie's Pizza, Subs, and Takeaway on Sanderson and Greenridge is one of them. On and On Marketplace on Capouse Avenue in Scranton, and Wonderstone Gallery, Dunmore Corners are 3 of my retailers. And I also have the Sunoco right next to the Taylor Walmart. So I mean, I ship at basically continental U.S. right now, and my main outlet of sources of sales is shows. So I go to shows pretty much every weekend outside of the first, say, 6 weeks of the year, and outside of the middle of the summer, I'm at shows all the time. So as an example, my next show coming up is Friday and Saturday, March 3rd and 4th. I'm going to be up at Montage Mountain Resort for Mountain Fest. And that's going to be I think it's 8 in the morning to 10 at night both days. So I'll be outside for 14 hours both days. And it was funny when I was signing up for that show, they're like, "Are you going to be okay being outside that long?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I got a heated vest and I'll just gear up. I'll be all right."
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So these shows, when you're doing these shows, are you actively making toffee for people? Are you actively showing, or do you just have maybe a video screen playing in the background as you're talking about your product?
So I do samples and sales at shows, and the very first thing I say to everyone that walks up to or by or pretty much anywhere near my booth is just, "Hey, free sample of cashew toffee." And what I do with them is I'll get them a sample, then I tell them the 5 ingredients, and of course I have my allergen warning up, which is very important. So anyway, I tell them the 5 ingredients, give them a menu, and then just tell them what I sell it for, and that they get all the free samples they'd like. And it's so funny. So sometimes people are going to come up to me and say, "Oh, I'm not going to buy any of it," and I'm like, "That's okay. You can still have samples. Those are free." It's tell your friends, tell everybody. Your opinion matters.
You have such a giving attitude, man. You have such a giving attitude. Is that just you as a person, or that's just you always trying to give it to people and promote your business?
Giving is its own reward.
Okay.
So if you give something to somebody for the sheer sake of just giving it to them, not for a reward or anything in return, the universe gives you a return in its own way. So to be giving and kind and caring, it goes a long, long way. And that leads into something I always like to say to people. The meaning of life, in the most simple way you can state it, the meaning of life, the most simple way to state it, is be happy, enjoy every minute you're here, and then try to help other people and animals do the same thing. And if everybody did that, the world would be an amazing place.
I agree. There's a lot of love to give, and there's not enough being given right now. That's how I view the world as well. You and I were talking. You were like, "Yeah, I've been watching your podcast. Sometimes you get into some philosophical things, and these are some of those moments where it's like, nah, there's a bigger picture. Where you were talking about the gift of giving. It's I'm not looking for anything. I'm just trying to give people something. I'm trying to give them a treat. I'm trying to educate them. And you probably get these people at these shows, and you're fascinating them. It's like, I'm fascinated by how educated you are about such a topic. I'm fascinated about the passion that you have about such a topic, because it's not every day that you meet someone who loves toffee like Josh here. Seriously. And I mean that in a good way, though. When it becomes a passion and you love it to that point, man, it's like it's endless. The possibility are endless. You continuously keep reinventing the wheel. You continuously try to find new flavors, which has got to be fun. Could you tell me about a time, as you're making these new flavors that you might have just created one and you were like, yeah, that one just wasn't it.
So basically, my R&D process involves having base recipes. So my base recipes are the butter toffee, peanut brittle, and my nut five ingredient toffee. So the 5 ingredient toffees are all the same recipe, but with a different nut variety. So that makes the R&D very easy. So to release macadamia, all I had to do is just put macadamias in it. My 5 ingredient toffee. The peanut brittle, I added cacao nibs to make a chocolate peanut brittle. Just like I said, takes away the R&D, makes it super easy. And those non-nutty toffees, butter toffee is a base recipe. So I take butter toffee and I add decaffeinated instant coffee to it to make a coffee toffee. Then I add cacao nibs to that to make a mocha toffee. Or I could take the butter toffee and add cacao nibs and bourbon extract to make the bourbon toffee.
So it's like you have base, and then from that base you can just mix and match. Gotcha. And are there any ones that you've done that were just like, yeah, I probably should not have mixed and matched that one?
We did an example of a cherry almond brittle,
Okay.
and it sounded good on paper, but the actual process kind of got a little bit messed up. Because it was an experimental thing, I removed one of the ingredients and shouldn't have, and then when we were finishing the batch up, one of the ingredients got put in at the wrong time. So it was sort of inconclusive, and it was something that I might like to revisit, depending. But one of the more interesting things about this, and I can't really exactly figure out why, I have ideas, but I'm not sure. So the sesame toffee, the macadamia toffee, they don't have like that roasted hit, that flavor I'm going for initially. And then about 2 days later, the flavor comes out of it. So I'm thinking like once it's cooked and cools down and sets and everything, I guess the oils come out of the nuts or whatever, and then you get your roasted flavor. But it's just like homemade food, you know? So homemade food is always better the next day. And that's one of my tricks when I'm having a dinner party or entertaining or serving a lot of people. I like to cook everything a day or two before. That way all you have to do is heat it and serve it, and it's even better because all the flavors got married.
Yeah, great point. Interesting point. The way you look at cooking, man, it's a science.
Yep.
It's a science. It's like chemistry.
Yeah.
You know? Go ahead.
And I'm very lucky because cooking has always been very common sense to me. Like since the day I was old enough to touch the stove, I've been cooking. So it's like the day I turned 12 years old, I was like, teach me how to cook. I want to do this. Because I always figured if you like to eat, you better know how to cook.
Exactly. I like that. I like that. You know, I often get asked like, oh, you know, like you cook? I'm like, yeah.
It's like
Otherwise, I'd be dead.
I eat, so I cook. It's cause and effect here.
I can't eat Burger King all the time. Like I can't do that, you know. But that's just what it is, man. So yeah, you have a true passion for cooking. I love it. I think it's amazing. And in a nutshell interview with Bob Savankis, Savakinis, excuse me, sorry, Mr. Bob. You describe your toffee as sort of a niche. You know, what exactly did you mean by that?
So the candy market is divided. It's about 60% chocolate confections, 30% non-chocolate confections, and then 10% gum, candy, and mints. Toffee is a segment of the 30% of the candy market that is non-chocolate confections. So if I had to ballpark a number, I mean, it's, I don't know, maybe 5% of 30% of the candy market. So what's that boil down to, like 1% of candy or something? It's not super common, and it's funny, like a lot of people don't know what toffee is. So I'll offer people toffee at shows, and they're like, "Oh, I don't drink coffee," and I'm like, "Well, that's good because this is toffee." You know, it's like, and a friend of mine was saying, like, I have a board that lists everything, and it says the word toffee about 15 times on it. And she's like, "Why don't you just put almond, cashew, pistachio?" I'm like, "Because people aren't going to know it's toffee. They're going to think I'm selling nuts and not toffee."
True. Good point.
So my current slogan right now, making toffee mainstream, refers to that. You know, we're just helping toffee to catch on by just exposing people to it, you know, one show and one sample at a time.
That's a new slogan you just created?
Came up with it a while ago. I mean, I got a whole big long list of them, and I'll just use them every once in a while or just throw them in places randomly.
So that's like your internal goal for the toffee market is making it more known to the public.
Yeah, because it's not right now. I mean, I've had people say, what is that? Chocolate, caramel, taffy, nougat, fudge, coffee. It's like, no, it's toffee. Well, what's toffee? You know?
You know, honestly, I would care to agree that it's just toffee. You know, it has its own category because it's hard for me to describe what I just ate there as far as like trying to compare it to other candies, how you should eat it. You know, like I'm a biter. I bite into shit. You know, like I get a lollipop. So I just bit into that ice cream. I'm biting into it. I got to cut that shit out because that's not how you eat toffee. I'm figuring that out. Okay. I mean, granted, it's all off my teeth now. Okay. I have no problem with my teeth. But you know, I think the melting method would be better. But then the brittle, right? The peanut brittle, was that one more like kind of a crunch?
Medium.
Is that medium? Okay.
Medium
okay.
hardness.
So maybe that one I'll keep my crunching method. I see Mike picked up the microphone over there. Do you have something to say?
Well, I wanted to ask you because you mentioned that toffee is not really well known, but it's part of like that 30%. Why do you think people are like so unaware of what toffee is? Do you think it's because of how saturated the market is and like the dominant?
It's a good question. I think it's because you can only find, you know, limited amounts, limited varieties, limited types of toffee on the open market. And one of the things that really got me into Naked Toffee. So one day in the candy factory, the GM was there, and I said to him, why don't we sell our toffee like this? It's so much better this way. Because the way they sold it, they made pistachio toffee, they coated it in chocolate and in nuts. And I said to him, why don't we sell our toffee just like this? It's so much better this way. His exact words to me were, well, I agree it eats better this way, but nobody sells it like that. Now, I'm a 25-year-old kid at the time, and my immediate thought was, if it's better and nobody does it, why don't we? But why should I tell a general manager that? It's like, so I just filed that in the back of my head and just did this.
So essentially, you learn from that statement that he made. Like, nobody's doing it that way, so why would we do it that way? Well,
Why wouldn't we?
That's entrepreneurship, though. Like doing something that's outside of the box that other people aren't doing. So that makes sense that you would look at toffee that way. So that was good that you kept that in the back of your head.
Yeah, it's an awesome question.
No problem.
So you also mentioned that your toffee is pure toffee,
Yes.
you know, but different because, like you were just saying, most toffee is coated with chocolate. It's perfect. This is going right in line. With chocolate or nuts, and Naked Toffee is not. Is that, hence the name Naked?
Yep.
Is that why we threw that in there?
So I call it Naked because it's uncoated, unadulterated, unbelievably good. It's also called Naked because it has very simple and pure ingredients. And one of the big parts of my marketing strategy is when you buy a quarter pound of Naked Toffee, you're getting a quarter pound of toffee, not half nuts and chocolate, half toffee. And the parallel I draw on that is that, chocolate is $5 to $10 a pound, depending on what you get. Toffee is like $30 to $40 a pound. So to me, coating this in chocolate is like a dirty marketing up trick to charge toffee prices for chocolate and nuts. Plus, this stuff is a very high quality toffee, so it is much, much better this way. I've coated this in chocolate before, and it actually takes away from the flavor of the toffee. And I feel that if you have an inferior toffee or one that's not that great, you coat that in chocolate, it's going to mask the inconsistencies and impurities in your toffee rather than highlighting them by not coating it.
That makes sense. So would you say that's what distinguishes Naked Toffee from the other brands of toffee?
Yeah, I mean, it's really not common to find uncoated toffee.
That's interesting, man. So let me ask you this: when you decided to go against the grain, to go against the way that people usually make toffee, what were the questions and what were your peers thinking about, like, oh, that's not how you make toffee? Were they saying that you were making it wrong, so to speak? Were you making it the wrong way, or were you just making it different?
They had no idea what I was doing in 2008. I was out of that candy factory in '05 and didn't keep in touch with any other candy chefs. I just saw an opportunity and took it as far as that goes. I saw an underserved segment of the candy market and was like, I'm getting right in there.
Smart man, just opportunity. So you saw the opportunity, you knew you loved it, you knew you had a good product, you learned from the best, and you just went out there and did it, man. So kudos to you, man. Kudos to you.
Yeah.
Because especially like I said, to go against the grain, that's always something that is fearful in anyone's life, to say, you know what, I'm done. I'm going to do it my way because I think it's better. And I know it's better, and you're doing it. You got your product in many stores, and your business has been in business since 2008. Someone help you with math real quick. It's 2023. Where are we right now? Anyway, you've been in business for a very long time. You know what I mean? So kudos to you and going against the grain and doing this, because that's very, very cool.
Man, a very important point I'd like to make is that you can't be afraid of change. Okay, so an important philosophical point is that the only thing in the universe that doesn't change is the fact that things change. So surging change swells anxiety, like it makes you scared when things change, but to ward off change will cause like stagnation, basically. So if you're afraid to change, if you can't change, then you can't grow, you can't evolve. And it can be very scary, but it's so funny in life. Like, people that have been stuck in their ways or doing things a certain way forever, they see the light one day or they learn a better way, and it's like, why didn't I do this sooner? And it's just that enlightening moment where it's like, I wish I did this years ago.
That comes with age, and that just comes with wisdom over time. Because I'll share this little example. I was at work. I mentioned to you I'm an HVAC technician, so I go up on roofs every now and then. But I was pulling all my tools up, and I have an abundance of tools. I'm pulling up to the roof one by one, going down, up, down, up, down, up. I was like, fuck this. I said, it was one of the first times that I really said, like, oh, you're getting too old for this. It was really one of those times. So I was like, I need to buy a rope.
Right.
And, all the old timers, they used to tell me, buy a rope, you're going to need it, buy a rope, you're going to need it. And that's just being able to be able to change with the change that you have within yourself, because the universe is constantly changing. I like that, because that is the only consistency in the universe, is that it's constantly changing.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, and as you get older, you have to learn to work smarter, not harder, because eventually your body is going to decline, but your mind is going to get stronger if you take good care of it, if you take care of your mind.
Agreed 100%. I know you mentioned that you were trying to get into a specialty trade show in New York City, or excuse me, just I think it was in upstate New York, right?
I had heard about it. I would want to go to one of those as like an attendee because I think to get in as an exhibitor, you have to be like in tiers or something. Like there's this whole big membership thing, and you have to be recommended, and it's up in New York and stuff. But it's definitely something I'd like to stop and check out because I mean, there's a lot of industry experts in there, and there'd be a lot of good people to bounce ideas off of and talk to that would probably be really willing to do so.
I like that. So like from the specialty trade shows, like what is it? It's just an abundance of people in a group, kind of like a flea market, would you say, or
It's sort of like a flea market, but they're not really selling anything. And then there's just samples everywhere you look. So I haven't been to one, but I've heard them described to me. And the person describing it was saying like, go hungry. You're gonna leave full, and there's gonna be samples and just giveaways and stuff everywhere. You know, it's like so they're not technically selling anything. It's like if I were to go to that, I would just be handing out samples to everyone I see.
okay,
Yeah.
good.
So you would more utilize a specialty trade show like that as like a networking method for you?
That's one part of it. Yeah, networking. I mean, you meet new people, make new contacts, you know, learn new methods, ideas, see what's out there because a lot of those things are like the cutting edge of what's happening in the culinary industry now. So you'll find a lot of like new ideas, new methods, new ways of thinking and stuff like that.
Right, so just bouncing ideas off of people that you can incorporate into your own business.
Yep, and getting fat on samples too.
There you go.
So the food industry is always changing, and you've been in business for quite some time. What are some of the adaptations that you've had to make throughout building Naked Toffee?
Well, the main thing that I do is I like to keep it as simple as possible for my own sanity, because if I had 11 varieties, 5 different sizes of each, I'd be going out of my mind, I just do quarter-pound packages, try to keep it easy. And basically what I did, so once I started making this in my own kitchen in 2008, I started, refining, improving, and perfecting it. So every time I would make it, I'd do different things or make something a little different or tweak this or change that. And by doing that, I made it a proprietary process. So I'm not using the recipes I learned when I was an apprentice. I'm using recipes that I've modified and tweaked throughout the years. And one of the funny things, one of the only things that I can't explain when I was making it by hand was sometimes a batch would break. And I couldn't figure out why. And it happened a few times over the years I was doing it, not often. So I don't know if it was an environmental thing, the way I was stirring it, whatever it was. But the batch would break. And the worst part about that is like you're stirring it and you can visually see that it stops cooking. And it's like, uh-oh. Then it starts getting like shiny on top. And then like it starts to bubble and then it just separates. Ooh. And it's like and as you're stirring it, you can see it. And it's just like, oh, this batch is getting thrown away.
Damn. And how long back in the day did these batches take you to make, especially if you weren't in an industrial kitchen?
You know what's weird? I've made 7-pound batches of toffee, 20-pound batches of toffee, and 40-pound batches of toffee, and it all takes about 45 minutes to cook. The weirdest thing. I'm assuming that's just how long the browning is going to take one way or the other, no matter what your size is. But yeah, because like if you cook 10 pounds of something, 5 pounds of something, and 1 pound of something, it's all different cooking times, but not toffee.
I like that, man. That's intense, man. You know a lot about toffee. You know a lot about your craft. So I respect it. I respect the game. I respect the gangster. That's what I say.
Real recognize real.
Real recognize real. Exactly. Where do you see Naked Toffee 10 years from now? Would you want to be nationwide? Would you like to keep it local? Any big changes that you would foresee, to 5 to 10 years from now?
Hey, my philosophy is I would like to grow sustainably. I would like to grow incrementally. I don't want to blow up all at once because if you have 1 million customers and you can only serve 1,000 of them, I mean, you're turning off a whole lot of people. So my whole thing is I just want incremental, slow, sustainable growth. And one of the funny things people say to me a lot is they're like, oh, you should go on Shark Tank. And I'm like, well, I say, here's the thing. If I was to go on Shark Tank, I'd go for 2 reasons only. One is to invest in rapid expansion or to sell out. I'm not going to them crawling for money, begging this, that, the other. But a funny point that my employee that I had a couple of years ago said to me, he said, every deal on ABC, they take 10% of. So apparently if you make a 50-50 deal with the Sharks, it's 50 for the Sharks, 40 for you, 10 for ABC. Little known apparent fact about Shark Tank.
I mean, that would make sense. That would only make sense there. Yeah. How big is your team? How big is the team that constructs Naked Toffee? Anyone who you definitely want to shout out who's been there since day one? You got any people like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, it's myself doing pretty much 95% of everything. My dad and his wife, Jennifer, do volunteer to help me in the kitchen, which is massive because that saves me from having to hire labor. That's a whole different animal in and of itself. So big shout out to them. They've been absolutely instrumental in helping me do this. They've been 100% reliable and just really awesome, and the cool thing is when we're in the kitchen cooking, it's like we're just hanging out, listening to music and having a good time. So I'm very good at planning and preparing and all that stuff. So things generally tend to go pretty smoothly. And oftentimes people want to say, oh, you're lucky, or like they confuse luck. The definition of luck is planning and preparation. So if you plan and you are prepared, you seem lucky, but you're just plan ahead and you're prepared.
Yeah. I respect that. And someone, like, every time I have a podcast with people, I try to guess if they're going to be punctual or not, because punctuality is like one of those big things for me. Yep. Although we pushed our podcast back 15 minutes, people were like, oh, you think he's going to be here on time? I'm like, honestly, I really do. I was like, knowing Josh, seeing the type of person he is off of a first glance, I'm like, he's going to be here on time. And you were. So, I could see that planning, and it's not luck, it's like right place, right time. I find myself in those scenarios a lot, and
you're lying. I was 4 minutes late.
Nah,
But I was down doing some shopping for tomorrow's cook, and then I stopped at home for breakfast real quick and popped over.
that's a good, 4 minutes is better than 20, bro. I'll take that. There are some people who show up like 30, 45 minutes later. I'm like, damn, son, like, what happened?
No, I'm obsessive about being time. Like see, it's funny. The word obsessive reminds me of something one of my coworkers said years ago. This one girl was like, oh, you're so obsessive compulsive. And I'm like, I am obsessive. I do things a certain way for a reason. I am not compulsive, because compulsive means you have to do it because you're compelled to. So I'm obsessive. I'm not compulsive. And she's like, oh, you're like a dictionary. I'm like, well, if you don't understand what you're calling me, I'm going to tell you what you're calling me. It's like, I'm not obsessive compulsive.
It was a sass moment. Was it a sass moment?
I just think she was breaking my balls, man.
Oh, okay. So any advice that you would give to any young entrepreneur, as you've been in business for so long, and you're doing well, and it seems like you are growing at that steady, rate that you want to be at.
Yeah. So entrepreneur-wise, I mean, the thing is, when you're starting a business, I mean, that's going to be one of the most difficult, stressful, but also potentially one of the most rewarding things you can do. Depending on the industry you're trying to get into or start up, there's various agencies and entities that can help you with that. So a really, really excellent resource for almost any startup business is the Small Business Development Center. That's the SBDC. You can find those in college campuses throughout the country. And for me, they've helped with like doing research. They've answered questions a lot of times. They can help you fill out forms. They can help, with if you're doing a business plan or filling out anything like that, they can answer your questions. They don't do it for you. But I mean, I've had meetings where it's like, I have to get this paperwork filled out. So I go in there and we do it together, essentially. Like, I give them the answers, they help me with it. And it's a really, really excellent resource. And then another business, which has been a great resource for me, is the Carbondale Technology Transfer Center, the CTTC, which is where I currently produce my candy. They help small startup food businesses by giving you the equipment and the location for your product, answering your questions, and they also hook you up with experts and all that. We may have said that before, but I got to repeat that. The CTTC is great for a startup business. And they have about 25 businesses operating out of there, everything from guitar strings, cutting boards, helmets for the Air Force, beer, ketchup, food, candy. There's all sorts of stuff going on in that place.
Interesting. Yeah. Good to know.
They also have a little office, and they're set up with 3D printers. I never got to see them in action, but I'm looking at them like, man, I'd like to see those things go.
Yeah, 3D printing is a cool art there. What do you got, Mike?
So when you were going to see like these different people to help you kind of build your business and get everything going so you can learn the process, like, did they also take you through like licensing your product, or like does it take like FDA approval to even get these on the shelves?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So FDA is a nationwide type of thing. I am registered with the FDA, and I'm inspected by the PDA, which is the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. So they, one of the most important things to realize with a food business and food inspectors is that we all have the same goal, which is keeping the product safe for the general public and not getting anybody sick. And if you look at your inspector as a source of information and knowledge and work with them, it goes a long, long way towards really getting it done properly. As far as, the initial licensing and stuff like that, I went through the SBDC, and they basically told me what I had to do, and I did it. And when I first started up, I had an employee who had an accounting degree, so he had some knowledge about this stuff too, and he was able to help me get this off the ground, which was really nice.
Right. So when you're going through that licensure process and you're getting inspected and stuff, I'm sure there's like, you have to detail literally everything you do, like the temperatures, the chemicals that you're using.
Yeah, there's a saying. Well, there's something that they say is that if you don't document it, it didn't happen. So I use a gluten test kit to make sure it's gluten free. I use a wand to make sure there's no metal in it. One of the metal wands. Just various stuff like that. I have production notes that are detail everything that happens on production day, from times, temperatures, humidities, and all that stuff. But there's just a whole lot to that, But like I was saying before, your inspector is a great source of information. And if you work with your inspectors and stuff like that, they're great to have.
And how often does your product have to get inspected so you can keep your license?
About once a year is usually the inspections.
So they're surprise inspections?
They can be.
They just show up at
So
the
one
door?
of the things that you agree to when you register with those agencies is that your kitchen is open to them at all times. So if I get a phone call right now, it says meet me at the kitchen, or I'm at your kitchen. Well, guess where I'm going? I'm going to be there too.
Right to the kitchen. Okay, I
Yeah,
got you.
yeah. So it's an open door anytime they want to go.
That's good. Good questions there. Good questions there.
Absolutely.
Throughout those trials of questions there, I was realizing there's a lot of meticulous work that goes into making toffee. And would you care to say that you love all that meticulous work, all that little attention to detail that you have to do in order to get your stuff on the shelves, even as far as making it?
Oh yeah, yeah. And the funny thing is, now the process that I'm using now to cook it, I have a fire mixer. Well, it's a steam mixer, and it has a heated jacket. It spins and stirs it for me. It has a thermometer in there, so I kind of get like a tear in my eye looking at that, going, "Man, I stirred this stuff by hand for 10 years." But funny little story. Shortly after I officially started in 2019, I got a phone call from an organic toffee company, and they wanted me to produce organic toffee for them. And I said, "Well, my kitchen is not organic." And they said, "Oh, that's okay. You can come to ours, but we don't have the equipment. We're going to have you stir it by hand." And I'm like, I did that for over 10 years. I'm not looking to go back to it. It's absolutely grueling to stir this stuff. But at the same time, the alarm bells go off in the back of my head saying, well, they're going to want my expertise, my knowledge, and my troubleshooting too. Because if something goes wrong or whatever, I'm sure they're going to have questions for me. And it's like, I'm not giving you my expertise that I worked so hard for.
Yeah, 100%. And if you do go there, there's a price for that. I was just thinking about that with my job. It's crazy. They want to charge $136 just for me to walk through the door. Yeah. I'm like, damn, that's crazy. You're really charging that much money just for me to walk through the door, and then you can't even break me off a big piece of that pie? But, that's just what it is. And knowledge is valuable. Knowledge is extremely valuable, and some people really overlook that, and they consider it you being selfish when you don't give them that little bit of knowledge, because it's like, listen, I worked so long to do this. I've worked so long to be a master at my craft to know how to do this. I'm always trying to help people with podcasts though. I'm always down to talk to someone, and I always tell people, like, yo, don't look for other people's approval when you do this. Do it because you want to do it. Like, I don't go on Instagram and ask the people, like, hey, do you want me to create like a YouTube video of me jumping off the tallest building in the America or something like that? I would just do it. I wouldn't. That's just how I am though. And that's what I think a lot of people need to understand, is that you need to, I'm getting off a tangent, but you just gotta do something when you want to go do it. And don't just
care what other people think.
Yeah, exactly. Just
be yourself, be unapologetically yourself, and be proud of who you are. And something I thought of while you were just saying that is a couple sayings I heard recently, and it said, every master was once a novice, and every successful person was once a failure. So that's good business advice, because, I think it's very, very rare in business that someone just picks it up and succeeds from day one. There's always going to be trial and error, troubleshooting, all that stuff. There's no such thing as just automatic success. And I remember reading something a while ago, and it was talking about how, like, they're talking about starting a business, and it's like a fair or a festival. So rich kids take as many shots at the bullseye as they want because they have the resources to do it.
Okay.
Middle class kids get one shot at the bullseye. Whether they hit it or not is up to them. Most don't succeed, some do. And it said, the poor class or the lower class are the ones working the fair, working the carnival. So it's saying that they don't even have the opportunity to play the game, essentially.
damn. That's a fucked up way to look at society, but it's
It fits.
unfortunately the truth.
Yeah.
It's unfortunately the truth. There are certain areas that, it's just a never-ending cycle of rinse, wash, repeat. It's just a matter of who's a name, but let's get away from all that. It's a little more morbid here, okay? We've definitely talked about toffee here, but one big question is, who is Josh Kieper? Who is Josh Juice? You mentioned it earlier. Joshua Juice.
Yeah.
Because, you and I, we met at the gym, we had conversations, but it's like, who were you before toffee? I'm interested in that. Before we get into this for a minute here, may I make an assumption about why you would call yourself Joshua Juice? Mm-hmm. Is that okay?
Yeah, go for
All
it.
right. It's probably, we had that conversation at the gym one day. I was like, yo, Josh, I was like, why are you always drinking
Juice.
some juice there, while we're at the gym? And it's like, it's blue. To me, it looks like the Red Surfer High C guy, the blue drink. And I'm like, what are you drinking there? Oh, hold on. Something just happened here. There we go. I was like, what are you drinking here? And, I think you mentioned it was Gatorade mixed with a bunch of other minerals. Is that what Josh Juice came from? What's that all about?
I just thought it was a really cool name. So I once saw somebody with the last name Juice, and I was like, Joshua Juice. I'm like, Joshua Juice. Joshua Juice is a good stage name, man. That's cool. And it's not like Josh Dog like everybody else. It's just something cool, But you remember that movie from, I think it was back in the 90s, Juice. How far will you go to get it?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I'm an old man like that.
No. This is crazy, man. Just because there's something else going on with that movie again, bro. I got this podcast coming up with someone who did a reenactment of that movie, Juice. He did a scene, and I haven't seen it yet, but like just a conversation that keeps getting brought up and reiterated is a fucking universe, man. And it's just like
universe, man. It's everywhere.
Too much lately, man. It's been too much lately. It's scary. It's cool, but it's scary, But
just remember, my friend, the universe is everywhere.
And I do have a couple more questions about you with the universe and stuff because you mentioned to me earlier. Did we get to why Joshua Juice? To the stage name? You were saying stage name. What do you sing? You perform as well?
Yeah, so I'm a cover vocalist. I do about 55 songs right now. I just started writing some original stuff, so I like classic rock, classic rap. I can do some really fast stuff like alphabet aerobics with normal, faster, way faster. So the way I got into performing, years ago, my family, we do like a karaoke thing at our family reunion on Friday nights. So I got into performing by doing that. Yeah. And then I was good at it. So I was like, all right, I'll keep doing this. So the first song I ever learned to actually perform was REM, It's the End of the World as We Know It. But I like fast, complicated, difficult stuff, And my 55 songs are pretty evenly split between rap and not rap. And the way I got into alphabet raps, so years ago, one of my friends showed me Daniel Radcliffe rapping alphabet aerobics on Jimmy Fallon. And I was like, man, I could do that. I was like, that's really cool. I was like, I could do it. So then I did that, and then I found the video on YouTube, and then I found out that it had like a playback speed thing, so you could speed it up. And I was like, oh, I could do it even faster now. It's a good time.
That's awesome, man. I never knew that side of you. All right, so we're getting to learn a little bit about Josh. Feel free to shoot me questions if you want as well at any given moment.
Oh yeah.
That's really cool. So alphabetical rap. So it's like ABC raps, basically. Like, are you moving?
I can give you an example. I can
Sure.
say it.
I mean, sure.
So I'll start you with some of the alphabet rap that I did, and it was I angrily aggravate an amal addicted addict, amortize in the attic, aimlessly aromatic, accentuating acrobatic, alphabetic anomalies, actuating an art attacking Asian aardvarks aboard an ashen arc, apathetically apart. So everything started with A. Then you just go through like the entire alphabet from A to Z like that.
That's wild, dude.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. But
so you are a dictionary, huh?
I just understand how my mind works.
An interesting mind. You're donating it, right? When it's all said and done, you're donating it. Mm-hmm. All right, good.
Yeah, I perform just for fun. Like, I'm not trying to make money off that or anything. I just like to go out and have a great time and just fuck the crowd up and have some fun.
Yeah, right. It'd be like, wait, they'll be like, what did he just say? Wait, run it back, Turbo. Did he just say that? That's really, really cool, man. Fun.
Yeah,
That's fun.
A good time.
The fun side of Josh. Okay. I know you mentioned to me that you are a part of some organizations here, and I did some, nonprofit organizations in the Native community, and I did some research, and it was really, really cool to see what I was finding about this. Okay, so you have the one nonprofit, Positree. Hopefully I'm saying everything right. Mm-hmm. If I'm not, please correct me.
Positree.com.
Positree.com and Antinonco.
Close. Antinonco Earth Art School. So that's antinonco.org.
That's the one I was like, I hope I don't mess this one up.
Antinanco, Antinonco. And then Paza is PAZATREE.com. Positree.com.
And these are nonprofit organizations in a Native community. Mm-hmm. And I was reading through it, and Positree, there was actually an article about Josh here. There were some pretty interesting stuff that I was reading, and I found out at the end, I was like, ooh, I'm like, this is really, really cool. Maybe we can expand about this, okay? So Positree, they had a term for you, which translated into the carrier of medicines.
Ah, yes.
What was that term?
Wakan Okpe Wachasha.
Okay.
Man who carries sacred medicine, yeah.
Okay, sacred medicine. So how did you earn that title, or what made them feel compelled to give you that title?
So a big part of what I've done with Positree has been we traveled up to South Dakota a couple of times. I'm the executive assistant to their CEO. And basically I showed up to these trips just super well prepared and was able to, have what we needed without really even knowing what was going on. So I basically am carrying the medicine. I have what we need, and I'm also, I'm trained in basic first aid and hip medicine from having trained in martial arts my whole life. Basic remedies, basic first aid. I have a family full of nurses and doctors, so that's all goes into that.
You mentioned hip medicine. What is hip medicine?
Hip medicine is a Chinese martial arts term, and it's basically first aid for a martial arts injury. So your swelling, your breaks, your bruises, stuff like that. So what I mainly use to treat those types of things for myself, because that was one of the best things I learned in martial arts was, self-care and plus having a very strong mind. But I actually brew medicinal wines, medicinal liniments. So the liniments you rub on your skin, and then the wines you actually drink. And the thing with the wines is they're like one of the most disgusting things you're ever going to taste in your life. It's like straight up herbs and grain alcohol. I diluted it in V8 so you don't taste it. But the stuff works. I mean, it literally, like, it fixes you from the inside out. It's unreal how well it works. And the funny thing with that stuff is you brew it for years and years and years. So the longer you let it sit on the alcohol and let it brew, the stronger it gets.
Did they present you with a recipe, or did you conjure up a recipe knowing the goods of herbs and greens on this planet?
So I get my herbs for my medicines and wines from Treasures from the Sea of Chi. It's a company out in California. And they have a whole big long list of medicines and wines and liniments. You can buy just the raw herbs. You could buy it pre-prepared. You could buy all sorts of stuff from them, but really, really cool company. It's their website is treasuresfromtheseaofchi.com. Chi is C-H-I. Really cool company. And the nice thing is when you buy this stuff, they send you instructions on how to make it too.
Okay. All right. So that's how you found out how to make it. Go ahead,
Well-
Mike. You got something?
So when you went out to South Dakota, were you on like a reserve?
I've been to a couple of reservations, yeah. So the first trip to South Dakota, we did, it was a 10-day thing. We took a 26-foot U-Haul truck and a minivan that we rented, filled it up with donations, and then traveled out to South Dakota. We made stops along the way to like drop off donations and pick up donations. And the final day of our donations, the hotel parking lot that we were in, I mean, it must have looked like a rummage sale. We unloaded the entire 26-foot U-Haul truck, put it on everybody's trucks. It was taking stuff, and they went and distributed it. It was really, really cool. So with that trip, we basically spent about, 2 days there, 2 days back for travel. We spent about 4 days giving out our donations and doing our business, and then we spent, 3 to 4 days traveling around and going to various sacred sites and stuff like that. And one of the cool things I did on that trip is I was their personal chef. They put me in a kitchen, and they were like, all right, we're feeding 40 people at 5 o'clock. We want buffalo stew, ojapi, and fry bread. Here's your helpers. Make it happen. So we did. Then the second time I went to South Dakota, we did something similar. And my personal chef gig that time was we were on Bear Butte, which is a sacred site, and they put me at a pavilion and were like, we need breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 50 to 100 people. Make it happen. So I was in the store at 6 a.m. that morning as soon as it opened with like 4 carts just full of stuff, got everything I needed, went to the site, set up. I had to send one of my helpers back to the store once for another supply run, and we just did it. It was a good time. And one of the cool things is one of the local hunters, she donated 25 pounds of elk cubes. So we made some nice elk skewers and a nice elk stew.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Now, what Native American tribes were there? Did you get to interact with any of them?
It's hard for me to identify the individual tribes just because there's so many of them. I mean, there's literally thousands and thousands of tribes. I mean, there's so many of them. I forget the actual number. There's like 500 federally recognized ones, but actually, there's so many more of them. It's I don't associate with these tribes specifically, but it's like we just like to help the natives any way we can with that stuff.
Right. As you should. Were you able to learn anything from them? Did they teach you any of their
You're killing me,
specific
Mike.
ways?
Mike stealing all your questions.
You're killing me, Mike.
I'm sorry, man. I'm locked in right now.
Go ahead.
Say again. It's laughing over here.
Were they
Did they teach me?
Yeah.
So the cool thing is, I've always had an affinity for Native culture. I've always been interested in it, and I've always wanted to do this stuff, but never had the outlet to do so. So I'd say the main thing that I learned from working with the natives is it's amazing how strong and how resilient they are. With all the things that have been done to the natives and their culture, it's just so amazing to see their outlook and their attitude and their strength and just how they just keep putting one foot in front of the other any way they can. And a big part of Native culture is natural law. It's just the way things are, the way the universe is. So those are some really cool points. I've had some really amazing experiences, gone on a lot of great trips with them, and I've gotten to see and do things that, no non-native has ever done before. So it's been pretty cool.
That's
know?
amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. So with that being said, we're actually going to start wrapping up the Middleman Podcast right now. Okay. I do have much more questions as far as what you were doing with the, Native Americans, the nonprofit organizations that you're working. So we're going to save that bit for tea time. Cool. But before we get off the air here, I like to give my guests the floor before we sign out here. So anything that you want to say, upcoming events that people can find you at, where they can find Naked Toffee, what stores they can go on, just anything that you want to reiterate, feel free. The floor is yours.
Well,
Josh.
hey, we mentioned the stores. I mean, any information you're looking for about Naked Toffee is on nakedtoffee.com. I'd like to give you one of my favorite pieces of advice that I give children about 5 to 15 years old. I obviously spend a lot of time doing martial arts. I taught kids martial arts for over 10 years, and I'm currently the camp coordinator at the Roots and Arts Youth Program in Farmingdale, New Jersey with Antonaco Earth Arts School. And what I'm always telling kids is you're not thinking about 20 years down the line right now, but if you listen to me, you're going to be glad you did. Learn everything you can. If someone's going to do something for you, have them teach you. Learn it from them. Every time you learn something, you're going to get a dot inside your head. Eventually, you're going to start connecting the dots. Then you're going to have a big skill set, and you're going to really know how to learn. I've been telling kids that for quite a while now, and I'm sure I've reached them, and that's what I've done in my life. Learn everything I possibly can, and that's why I just have a ridiculous skill set. So my whole thing is I can talk to almost anybody about almost anything, and if I don't know what they're talking about, I'll listen and figure it out. It's funny to me, like when I tell people that I've been in martial arts my whole life, they say something really stupid. A lot of them are like, oh, well, you could kick anybody's ass. And I'm like, that's not what it's about. Even if you're a professional fighter, you're still going to spend such a small part of your life fighting that it's almost a useless skill. And eventually you're going to be too old to fight. The number one most important thing you learn from martial arts is a strong mind. And if you develop a strong mind, you can accomplish anything.
Very well, man. Great. I love how you said that. That's a great piece of advice for the people to listen and take in, especially for the young people who are developing. If you're always looking ahead, you can set yourself up. You can really set yourself up. But also live in the moment. Don't get lost in the sauce, which is what I always end up doing.
It's always now.
But with that being said, everyone, thank you. Thank you out for Josh joining me here on the Middleman Podcast. Shout out Naked Toffee. He's got one hell of a product here. Make sure you check him out, and maybe go come see one of his shows because they'll give you a free sample. You got to try his toffee. It's really, really good. Preferably with coffee is the middleman's way, all right? So thank you for watching the Middleman Podcast. We're going to transition to tea time, not brought to you by, but inspired by Arizona Iced Tea. Thank you for watching. See you later.